Vice President of Market Research at the Consumer Technology Association.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Wow, what a great crowd. Well, yeah, good evening once again, everyone. And like the announcer said, I'm Steve Koenig, Vice President of Research at Consumer Technology Association. CTA, of course, the owner and producer of CES. And so it's my privilege to be among the first to welcome you to CES 2022. Whether you're here in the seats or watching online, I bid you a warm welcome. And the best part about it is, folks, for you lucky people, CES 2022 starts right now. Can we celebrate that? You betcha. You betcha. It starts right now. And you know, it's been a while since we've been together, certainly here in this place in person. So if you'd indulge, I just wanted to basically reaffirm with you that CES is the global stage for innovation. Now, if you were with me for my Trends Talk last year at the All Digital CES, you heard me talk about how in these periods of economic downturn and certainly crises like the pandemic, what we typically see, and this is really riffing off observations from the British economist Christopher Freeman, that innovation tends to accelerate and even bunch up. And as that innovation is unleashed, this is what levels up economies, this is what levels up society and the consumer experience, and just generally makes life better. And we've witnessed an abundance of innovation across this whole season and certainly over the past year. And it's all here waiting for you, and examples are on both screens here and online. Examples of this are all around the show. Just witness, for an example, we've got Evo Cargo, the autonomous truck manufacturer from Russia. VinFast is also here in West Hall, Vietnam's first ever vehicle OEM. Innovation from down under in Latin America. We've got semiconductor innovation from the Dutch in the Netherlands with the PMIC, the NAUI PMIC, Power Management Integrated Circuit. If semiconductors are your thing, that's a cool product to check out. And as much as we've seen this robust spirit of innovation, we've also seen a lot of tech investment. So that's a good plug for the 800 plus startups from 19 different countries that are waiting to meet you enthusiastically in Eureka Park, which is going to be incredible. And among them, a contingent from Mexico, as noted here, in Espanol, the product, the Banda Nutánica, if I said that right. Any native Spanish speakers, hopefully I did. I'm from Texas, but Spanish is definitely a second language for me. But in any case, this is a sleep aid apparatus that's worn about the head, promotes sleep. And the most interesting thing, though, is the original design for this product, this Nutánica band, from an 8-year-old boy. So amazing stories of innovation, compelling products, all waiting for you here at CES 2022. And we're so excited to have you here with us for the event. So we got a lot to talk about. And generally speaking, we're going to cover off on a number of these areas, one by one, going through a lot of the different trends, just essentially to equip you for really perspective and context, I think is what it boils down to with these trends talks. We see a lot of individual products, we ask a bunch of questions, but I think all of us are looking for perspective, and that's really my goal tonight, is to share with you our perspective, really what we see through the lens of our research at CTA, and just, again, equip you for your time out on the show floor or online at the virtual show and all the activities that are happening there. So let's get started. Let's take a look at tech demand. Now, I think you'd agree, we've talked a lot across this season about the historic highs of consumer demand for technology around the world, category by category, hitting sales records of retail sales and so forth. And these data from our research partner GfK bear testimony to that. Looking back last year across the first 3 quarters, year-over-year quarterly growth documented here in different places around the world by GfK. And of course, hitting some historic highs. I mean, we know about this. And of course, as we move into Q3, as noted here in green, that growth is starting to taper a little bit. But like the title suggests, still growing and still strong. And there are specific reasons for that I want to share with you tonight. And this is kind of coming back to the important perspective about what you're going to see and putting that in context. Because these key fundamentals from a consumer behavior standpoint that have helped propel the industry forward to historic highs, these are still in play. And more importantly, they're going to continue to pay dividends as we move further into 2022 and are going to promote growth. So remaining strong. This is the view from places around the world. Well, what about in the U.S., our home market? Well, more of the same, and congratulations, you're the first to see this data. We just released this data, our usual forecast update for the U.S. market released at CES. You're the first to see this, our January 2022 Consumer Technology Industry Forecast Update. Our new number for 2022, yeah, it's on the screen. It's just over $500 billion, trillion with a T. So that's a huge number, a new high for the industry. Which is why we say, growth and momentum are still in play. We're still growing. And again, this has everything to do. How are we going to hit this over $500 billion number here in the U.S. market, which is a combination of consumer tech spending on, yes, hardware in blue, but also in orange, software and services. But how are we going to hit that? Well, these core fundamentals that we'll talk about are still in play. This is on top of, and that's what's significant. Look at the growth rates for 2020 and 2021 down at the bottom of the screen. Very unusual in a mature tech market like the United States to see back-to-back or consecutive high single-digit annual growth for consumer tech spending in these areas, in this sector. So these are multiples of GDP in 2021, nearly hitting 10% on the back of 7% in 2020. And like I said with the previous slide, growth starting to taper a little bit. We can't hit these historic highs forever, of course, but still growing. And it's these core fundamentals that are propelling us forward. So even as we get back to a more normal growth rate, around about 3% in the U.S. market, estimated for this year according to our latest, again, just released today data. So what are these core fundamentals? What are we talking about? What have we seen through the lens of our research? Well, there are three of them that I want to talk through with you today, and this is stuff that you can jot down because all these things, like I said, are going to be paying dividends as we move into the new year and are going to support the growth that we're forecasting, at least for the U.S. market, and I think also around the world as well. And the first thing is this, is that in this season, consumers have been going about leveling up their tech. Everybody's looking to do things easier, work smarter, not harder. So they've been leveling up their tech to live a more 21st century lifestyle. In the season of the pandemic, a lot of freed up discretionary dollars and euros and all kinds of other currencies really pouring into tech. And that's what's really fueled these historic sales highs and robust consumer demand. This data from the U.S. And our annual study and assessment of U.S. households and their ownership and then, of course, purchase plans and what they've been purchasing. A lot of data here, so let me unpack this really briefly. The growth rates are in blue. These are the fastest growing products over the past year. But what's even more important is just simply the list of products themselves. The list of products themselves, which you see smart over and over and over. That's why a more 21st century lifestyle, smart appliances, smart light bulbs, smart doorbells. We also get a quotient for staying fit with connected fitness equipment. Again, leveling up their tech. But not just a U.S. thing. Also, we see the same exact thing when we conducted research last October in Europe, across these three European countries, the UK, Netherlands, and France. Consumers in those countries telling us that they have robust purchase intentions, a lot of core devices topping the list, but we get a flavor for smart home, and you could also say audio with smart speaker, nearly 30%, and also entertainment with game consoles. So consumers leveling up their tech, and we expect that to continue because once they start to level that up, they want more and they want more. This has certainly been true in the smart home category, where research has shown if you buy one or two products, you tend to want more. Like, well, I think I'm going to add that doorbell, and I think I'm going to add this sensor, and so forth. So this is what our research has shown. But what's the second thing? Well, the second thing has to do with premium experiences. And here's some more data from GfK. Now, this is really looking at the premium experience idea through the lens of brands. And what we're looking at here, according to GfK's data, looking at the first 9 months in aggregate of 2021, spending growth in different regions around the world attributable to premium brands as defined by GfK in blue versus regular or standard brands in orange. And you can see spending growth attributable to premium brands according to GfK's analysis, vastly outstripping that for regular brands. Now what's going on here? Well, again, this is one view of this, but I think generally speaking, this is a trend that has been simmering for the better part of 10 years. This idea that consumers, and think about your own personal experience. Anybody want an okay experience, or do you want a great experience? So brands is one way to look at this. I think there are a lot of brands that we don't know a lot about that have some great experiences. So I would underscore the experience. We're looking for premium experiences, great experiences, and yeah, in some cases, maybe we're willing to open our wallets a little bit wider to get that. And we can, as I said, this trend has been simmering for the better part of 10 years, but I think has really started to come to a boil in this season, where consumers are really looking for that premium experience and willing to maybe pay a little bit more and so forth. So we say tech and durables on the road to premium, because this is definitely something to watch. Like I said, it's been simmering for the better part of a decade, moving progressively to more premium experiences and people looking to that and willing to, I'm going to step up to that. You think back several years, like Beats headphones as one example, and maybe a little bit less further back, like with the Nintendo Switch. And then maybe nowadays it's different wireless, true wireless earbuds. These are the things that people want, and they're willing to pay in there, and they're adopting these, as we saw from some of the U.S. data, more and more of these things, because that's what they want. They want a 21st century lifestyle. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the third thing, and that's where we talk about services. Now, services have become really important to the industry, but I would say important in all caps to consumers. And think about your own experience. And our lives are increasingly defined by technology. And technology itself is increasingly defined by what? By software, and by extension, services. In the industry today, and certainly from a consumer point of view, attached services, not just a simple dumb device, it needs to be connected, but it also needs to be connected to some kind of a service. And we can think of a lot of different categories today that are emerging and rising in terms of sales volume and consumer interest, like connected fitness. Think about brands like Peloton and Hydro that is here. You get the whole package. You get a piece of connected fitness equipment, and then you get the online classes and these kinds of things. So again, this also kind of riffs off the second thing, a premium experience. I'm not just buying, in the case of Hydro, a rowing machine. I'm buying a rowing machine that's connected in a whole class. I can be rowing right along with people and competing. These kind of premium experiences. You see what I'm saying? I see some heads nodding. But in any case, the consumer's zeal and enthusiasm for services is illustrated by some of these latest global subscriber numbers for many of the popular streaming video services. Now, the numbers for Netflix and Prime Video are impressive, but I'm most impressed with the numbers for Disney Plus. I remind you, Disney Plus launched just over 2 years ago in November 2019. Now, we all know that content is king, and I think that may have something to do with Disney Plus's success. I'm a Star Wars geek, and so that's one of the reasons. Are there any Star Wars geeks in the audience? Can I get an amen for that, right? The season 3 of The Mandalorian cannot come soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. But don't tell me about the Book of Boba Fett. I'm waiting when I get home from CES to stream that, so don't tell me anything about that. But in any case, it may surprise you to learn that research has shown, thinking about the importance of services, that the average consumer globally is subscribed to, either paid or unpaid, 8 different services online. 8. And it is kind of interesting to just take a personal inventory of your own services. Like, wow. And so I did this, and I came up with 9. And that's, so I guess you could say I'm pretty much on trend. But I'm a Gen Xer, which is to say I'm an old guy. And so some of the younger people on my team, these millennials, they're like, 9? Wow, let me see. They come up with these big numbers, like over 20. And then they tell me about these different services, and I just have to say, I'm really sorry, but I've never even heard of that before. Anybody else have that happen? Like, wow, there's a lot of services. And not just streaming video, audio, gaming, the list goes on. Connected fitness, again, the list goes on. So many of these different services, very, very important. But another thing that is important is that this rapid adoption and importance of services is starting to reshape consumer behavior. And this is also where you can kind of think back to your own experience. So in this season of the pandemic, we as consumers have made a lot of behavioral pivots, haven't we? We've had to adjust our behavior in a lot of different ways. And I call these pandemic pivots. We've pivoted in different ways, shifted our behavior. But what's interesting and what the research is telling us on the slide here, if we could have the slide back, what the research is showing is that in our research in the US and Europe, at the very least, a strong proportion of consumers have adopted at least one of these services across these different domains in the past year. But look at the numbers below that, the percentage of those consumers that plan to stick with them. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we've made a number of pandemic pivots, shifts in our behavior. Services have been a big part of that, which is to say that tech has been a big part of that. And we're not retreating from those positions. We're going to stick with them. And in fact, even lean in even further. The importance of services, the importance of technology is reshaping consumer behavior as a product of this season of the pandemic that we've been in. Really, really significant. But as much as consumers have been leaning into tech and certainly services as we've described here robustly, there's another group that have been leaning into the tech sector, and that is investors. So here we're looking at some data from CB Insight, that's Charlie Bravo, CB Insight, and their Q3 State of Venture report. This is a Q3 snapshot. CB Insights does this. But just take a look at the rapid rise of funding flowing into startups. A great many of them, in fact the majority, tech startups around the world. So here we're riding right in parallel, right in tandem with that rapid rise in consumer demand for technology and investors keeping pace. Investors keeping pace quarter after quarter, hitting new highs and new highs. Looking regionally around the world. This is also interesting data, and again, just a Q3 snapshot, but tens of billions of US dollars. What I'm trying to say is that a tech investment from VCs and other constituents is not a US thing or a Silicon Valley thing, it's not a European thing or an Asia thing, it's a global thing. It's happening, and the evidence is on the screen. And really, also here at CES 2022, as I mentioned, 800 startups from 19 different countries in Eureka Park at CES 2022. And I think digging a little bit deeper as to some of the specific funding areas, as I mentioned, this rapid rise of funding to global startups, but a lot of these are tech companies. And small as they are, they're in fintech, retail tech, healthcare. That's kind of an obvious one where we've seen a lot of innovation. So I think this, in particular, gives us a good template, or at least maybe a preview of what we might see when we visit Eureka Park and we engage with some of these startups. Probably a lot of fintech, retail tech, and so forth. In some ways riffing off of fintech, but also health tech, and a lot of other categories. But tens of billions of dollars each quarter, thousands of deals globally each quarter, pouring into mostly technology startups. And an incredible story for our industry. And again, it's here at CES for you to take in. Okay. So let's talk about some of the challenges, and maybe these are in some ways the elephant in the room. We've all been talking about supply chain, so I don't want to labor the point. I've just got this one slide to kind of share with you. Because supply chain, this is not just a tech sector thing. This is a multi-sector across the economy. Everyone is dealing with supply chain issues, from the consumer electronics superstore to the smallest grocery retailer. Everybody's dealing with supply chain issues. And a lot of experts, as you've probably read, and maybe even written yourselves, no one is saying that this is going to unwind and unravel anytime soon. This is going to be with us. But at least some of these shipping costs are coming down, which is good news, certainly for small and medium-sized businesses. And that's whether they're in the tech sector or elsewhere. So this is good news, but yeah, it has been something that there's been a lot of friction remaining at U.S. ports and other ports around the world, container ships waiting for a berth, such as Long Beach. Those counts just continue to rise, it seems. But they will come down, but the point being, it will take probably the better part of 2022 before we start to unravel some of this. But there's another issue that I think will come into play in your conversations with brands across CES as you're out there covering the show and talking. Yeah, supply chain is one of them, but one that is uniquely technology is the chip shortage. And this is what a chip shortage looks like. So this is obviously an aerial view of the parking area at the Motor Speedway in the U.S. state of Kentucky. And these are not race fans, it is not race day, but no, these are all pickups waiting for chips. They're all waiting for chips. And just notice how every conceivable parking space is taken up. So we also know that automotive has been in many ways at the bullseye, of the chips crisis. But so therefore it'll be interesting, and vehicle OEMs have done some really creative things and ways to cope with this chip shortage. Not enough time in the presentation this evening to go into all those things, but these are some good questions to ask some of the brands over in West Hall. How are you working through this, and you're going to be able to deliver, and how are you getting chips? A lot of creative strategies have been working over the past 12 to 24 months in automotive. But let's put some numbers to this chip shortage. Automotive is just one facet, obviously, of the consumer tech industry. Very broadly, and this is data according to the global supply chain management company, Levadata, and their most recent read from late last year, on average, the lead time for semiconductors, about 5.5 months. That's a long time to wait, especially if you're a small business trying to produce a product. And as I mentioned before with supply chain, if you can get the chips, your next challenge is, now I got to get the ships. So chips first, we'll build it, and then we'll get the ships. So this is kind of adding up to kind of a one-two punch in many ways. So big challenges, but I think what you're going to see across the show floor at CES, and this is something that CES does every year or perennially, is bring forward solutions to these big problems. So I talked about semiconductor innovation from the Dutch with the Nowie chip, but also brands like Evo Cargo and Too Simple over in West Hall that are bringing forward 21st century logistics solutions to help with the supply chain crisis. If we can't get enough drivers, well, we don't need them. We have autonomous trucks to take products. So real solutions to real world problems. Technology is the answer, and it's here at CES. So if we come back to the slide, again, 5.5 months. Big brands can probably do okay, and they can probably beat this timeline, but who can't? Or who has a harder time? That's right, SMEs, small and medium-sized businesses. So they're the ones that are maybe having a bit tougher time. However, there is a fix to the chip shortage, and I'm going to reveal that to you tonight. Really, there's two fixes, a short-term solution and a longer-term solution. And the short-term solution, at least according to Semiconductor Industry Association, is we're trying to, and this has been going on since last year, just trying to squeeze out more production volume from existing facilities. And there are a lot of different strategies for this, adding a third shift. So a lot of these facilities have literally been working around the clock. The other thing is just adding on to, in different ways, existing facilities, maybe a new production line. So that work is going to continue, as noted here, into 2022. But folks, that's really just shoveling against the tide. That's shoveling against the tide. And everybody knows that. What's the real fix? Well, you guessed it. We need to just simply build more chip-making facilities, which in the nomenclature, fabs, more chip fabs. And you might have already encountered some of this information because some of the big chip-making companies, semiconductor firms listed here, have already come forward back in 2021 announcing their plans to put forward tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in CapEx to build these new facilities. But you've heard the expression, Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, neither are chip fabs. No, in fact, they take about 2 to 3 years. And by the way, you can't just put them anywhere. The infrastructure requirements are monumental, electricity, water, a lot of considerations. And by the way, the machines that operate inside, those are infinitely complex, very expensive. They don't just get built in a week. Long lead times, you betcha. So it's going to take time to build these facilities. But as noted with Intel's plan they've earmarked 2 facilities for Europe. I think over this period where we're building these facilities, I think where we'll exit somewhere around the middle part of the decade. I won't put a date on it, but around about the middle part of the decade when a lot of these new facilities come online. And we'll hear about this as we move forward in time. New facility opens here, new facility opens there. They're going to make these chips there, they're going to make these chips over here. We'll have a greater geodiversity of semiconductor manufacturing facilities, which is desperately needed because today, about 3/4 of chip making is attributable to East Asia. So what am I saying? I'm saying we're potentially one typhoon or earthquake away from a major disruption in chip making for the world. So greater geodiversity by the middle part of the decade is probably a good thing. All right, let's get into some of the individual category trends and unpack those for you. Again, just better to equip to equip you for some of the major products and so forth that you're going to be looking at across the show floor at CES 2022. And I want to start at the top with connectivity. If we're talking connectivity, yes, of course, we're talking 5G, which is really going to provide the connective tissue, if you like, for a lot of innovation in this decade. And 2022 is going to be, I think, a really important year. Now, why do I say that? Well, you may have heard of 3GPP, the global standards body for wireless, and a little bit later this year, I think right around Q2, end of Q1, Q2, they are set to publish their Release 17 list of protocols and requirements that will really essentially equate to the starting blocks, if you like, just like a runner for industrial IoT applications, which is why we've said from the beginning that the story about 5G and what's most interesting is that it will not be led, it's the first wireless generation that will be led by the enterprise and not consumer as it is today. So what I'm really saying is I think 2022 is when we start to turn from a more consumer-centric focus with 5G. A lot of 5G phones out there, we're going to see them at CES 2022. Maybe you've already got one in your purse or pocket. But the real value of 5G, and this is again what we're going to be talking about year after year after year after year in this decade, is the enterprise, the enterprise quotient industrial IoT. And what that looks like, and just one way that looks like, is all this increasing cloud infrastructure, more and more data centers and so forth, more and more things pushing to the cloud, which is to say digital transformation, something we've also been talking a lot about. So this is really, I think, going to help make a quantum leap in many ways. In a word, automation, with a lot of this IoT, industrial IoT requirements, and 5G will provide the connections for that. So hand in hand with 5G is a key ingredient technology, and this is something else we've been talking about for a long time, is of course AI. And simply put, the title is a little bit fanciful, but what are we really saying here? We're saying that AI is getting better and better and able to do more things, and as a result, we're able to task AI with more and more different applications or use cases. And this is another perennial story at CES that we indulge in, is not only discovering new innovations, new technology, but also new use cases for existing technologies. Wow, we're using this tech to do that? That's a really interesting story. And AI, this is chock-a-block, the story of AI. And if you not enough time, kind of like with automotive, not enough time to go into all the details, but if you want to really get into and plumb the depths, you're going to encounter terms like natural language processing, which has helped robots be more conversational, as one example. There are many, many others, but also for AIs to understand us better and our data better, all this data that we're producing and accumulating. But transformative AI applications, as I said before, with new use cases, and I think this is really illustrated, I think, best by the innovations that you're going to see from John Deere and Company with the See and Spray. Agriculture is actually a really high-tech sector, and you may not think of agriculture, as the farmer in the dell. You may not think of agriculture as being really high-tech, but it is. And technologies like the See and Spray incorporate all the sensors and all the software and so forth that you find on the slickest self-driving vehicle. And actually even better, mil-spec, they can plant seeds within a square centimeter. But this See and Spray actually is also kind of the tech for good and a good sustainable story in that using computer vision and AI, it can identify undesired sprouts in your field, which is code for saying weeds, and it's just zap those individually, instead of the old way of just spraying the entire field. So what I'm saying is we're using less herbicide, that saves costs to the farmer, which reduces food costs, improves the farmer's profitability, but is also better for the planet. So AI, part of this story, the sustainable story, tech for good, lots and lots of examples, and that's just the beginning in agriculture. Kind of the other side of that coin is all the innovation in food technology. Like Impossible Foods and AI coming into the picture, and Beyond Honeycomb, a startup out in Central Plaza that has a fully robotic AI kitchen that can prepare meals for you and little snacks to top up your tummy as you're motoring around CES. Okay, well, let's continue and look at our next trend. Well, actually, I want to just make a remark that what do consumers think about this? What do consumers think about this? And what's really interesting, we did some research at CTA among U.S. adults, and as you can see here, consumers are really open to AI helping out around the house, on the factory floor, lots of different things, cooking meals, giving fashion advice. Maybe I need to do that, and so next year I'll look a little bit better. Maybe this suit is looking a little worn, I'm not sure, but I can ask my digital assistant, and it'll say, Steve, it's time to buy a new suit. Maybe, or certainly I'll have help picking out a tie, maybe that. Some of us guys, we might struggle. Honey, does this look good? No. Well, now the AI can tell us. The AI can tell us. But cooking meals, there's so many different examples here, even providing legal advice. Maybe, we used to look up things online, but maybe more and more, we're going to pivot to different AIs to help us with these things. So consumers are open to a lot of this innovation, AI making wider contributions, certainly in the consumer space, but across the economy. Okay, we'll move on now, and you've been waiting for this, the slide on Metaverse, okay? You've been waiting for this one, and here it is. Let me talk a little bit about Metaverse, which is really one of those trends that has popped up recently, but we definitely want to talk about this because the question is Metaverse here? And I would respond with the Metaverse is closer than you think. And the reason I say that is that all the building blocks, if you stop and think a moment, of the Metaverse are already present and in play in the industry today. And a few examples, are cloud, 5G for the robust connectivity. We already have haptics, and haptics get better and better every day. And then, of course, volumetric video, another component potentially of the Metaverse. So a lot of these bricks, if you like, are still here. It's just really assembling them into a product or an experience, which Metaverse really is an expression for the next generation of the internet that will convey increasingly immersive digital experiences. And those immersive digital experiences will, over time, and I'm talking like over the next 10, 20 years, these immersive digital experiences will become inextricably linked with our physical reality. That's what Metaverse is. So is it here? Well, sort of. And there are a lot of different approaches, and that's what you're going to encounter, these early plays, Metaversian kind of plays. Take Hyundai Mobis as one example. Over in West Hall, you can engage with them over there, and you can create your own little avatar, and then actually use that avatar to test drive a virtual Hyundai. So an early example, and these early examples give us an idea, but we don't exactly know, and that's what CES is great about. We find out a lot of answers to some big questions like, is the Metaverse here? Well, we'll see a lot of early examples. Game and software approach. Social, that's another area where we're starting to see Metaversian kind of marketplace show up. And then crypto, which is ostensibly the coin of the meta realm, if you like. So more activity there. But again, this is another one of these trends that we're going to be talking about probably for the next 20 years. I remind you that Ready Player One was set in the year 2045. So if you're thinking about Ready Player One, sometimes it's like, wow, is that what we're going to kind of experience? That was 2045. So I'm not saying it's going to take that long. It may not, but it's going to be an evolving story. This idea of metaverse, and we can also get another view of kind of what kind of pattern might we see in terms of the evolution of the metaverse when we look at what's happened with a lot of the XR technologies, in particular VR. If you remember, let's take VR. We'll unpack that quickly. VR started off with a lot of enthusiasm in the consumer space with gaming and so forth, these headsets, and they were all, everybody wanted to get in on this and so forth. But what we've actually seen over time, and this is what the research is showing in the stat at the top, is significant, is that the real value, it has been to the enterprise. Just look at all these different use cases, and of course, when we think about marketing and sales, this is where we overlap with the consumer. But enterprise has really taken up VR, and so maybe it'll go that way with Metaverse. Maybe we'll start to see virtualized conferences, virtualized training seminars, and so forth, as well and alongside maybe Metaversian social media type activities that are more 100% consumer facing. So it's very interesting to think about and talk about. I wish we had more time to do that tonight, but it's going to be very interesting at the show this year to get a view of these first steps of the metaverse and see how it's starting to coalesce. Again, this next generation of the internet that will deliver increasingly immersive digital experiences, and those immersive digital experiences will over time be inextricably linked with our physical reality. That's what metaverse is. But there's so much more, and I wish we had like a good hour and a half to just really dive deep into these. I've talked a little bit about transportation, so I won't labor the point, but space tech is a brand new trend and a brand new competitive sector within the tech industry. And Sierra Space is here with a model of their Dream Chaser spacecraft, an incredible innovation. We heard a lot about space tech in the context of celebrity tourism in space. William Shatner, Captain Kirk, went up and he had his time, and that was really cool. Space, it's going to be a while before we're saving our dollars to have a holiday in space or in orbit, a honeymoon in orbit. Maybe that'll be in 10 to 20 years' time. Could be, but what about now? What about today? What are the commercial applications? What are the business opportunities? And this is another thing that really the canvas of CES illustrates for us quite well, these emerging opportunities and how are they going to grow. And space tech is one of those. So what are the commercial applications? What are the business opportunities? We'll find out. We'll find out here at CES 2022. And sustainable, this has become, I would say, an increasing drumbeat and momentum within the industry and the tech sector around sustainable, and it's starting to touch all kinds of different places around the industry. But just listed here, alternative power sources, this is kind of an obvious one. Wind, solar is a couple of examples. Food tech I talked a little bit about before with John Deere and agriculture, but also AI robotic kitchens and possible plant-based engineered foods and so forth. And then really in terms of sustainability, you have the macro view in smart cities and the micro view in smart home. All these innovations here at CES 2022. In digital health, this is certainly, and I would put at the salient of innovation in this season of the pandemic for obvious reasons. A lot of these things are going to be in play. Let's talk a little bit more about digital health. And it's true, as the title says, empowering consumers. And this has been an ongoing saga in this genre, and it just keeps getting better. And like I said before, at the top of the talk, accelerating innovation in seasons of disruption like with the pandemic that bunch up. And that is certainly true when it comes to digital health. Particularly, and also I talked about behavioral shifts that we've all made as consumers, and telemedicine is one of those. Again, a tech-powered service that is revolutionizing how we deliver healthcare, not just in the US, not in Europe, but around the world. So incredible innovation. Essence, Vitalon, kind of an ecosystem product to kind of work with remote patient monitoring, which is also starting to gain a lot more momentum and really change the shape of care. But it goes beyond that. So, a lot of sensors and wearables and so forth. We've seen this, diagnostic systems a lot, but more and more of these things are kind of having a therapeutic bend to them in terms of equipping people, of which there are hundreds of millions of people around the world that have to daily manage chronic disease. So smaller, just very unnoticeable sensors. Like here with the Abbott Freestyle Libre 3, another brand that you can check out over in North Hall is BioIntelliSense. They also have a wearable sensor. Very, very discreet. You never know that the person was wearing it. But equipping that person with robust vital metrics that they need to stay on top of, a lot of this telemetry also being shared with their doctors, ostensibly in real time or packaged on a daily basis, kind of a daily download, weekly download, maybe top lines, how is the patient doing, accelerating care and improving the value of care. So a lot of innovation happening in this space. And lastly, with the Withings example, managing your health, doesn't have to be uncool or unfashionable. A lot of these sensors packaged, like as you can see here, in a smartwatch context, you're looking good, but you're also in tune with your body. And as I said before, for a lot of people that are managing chronic disease, that's a daily endeavor. A daily endeavor. Certainly think about like diabetes and so forth. So a lot to see in North Hall for digital health. I've talked a little bit about that. But one of the new areas of innovation that has opened up, and this is something significant that you're going to want to check out, and some of the various solutions. You can see some of these different genres here bulleted for you. And consumers are open to these new solutions to help support mental wellness. And that's everything from sleep to what we've seen in this pandemic, a pandemic of a different sort, which is depression. I don't know if you've seen some of the statistics lately, but depression diagnoses have also been skyrocketing around the world in this season of the pandemic. People staying at home, disconnected, and so forth. So solutions coming forward to help people live healthier lives, better mental fitness, manage these things. Also stress management. Something as busy business people, that's a daily endeavor for us. It certainly is for me. So the statistic here from our latest research, though, on this, that over half, 52% at least of U.S. adults, are open to these kinds of solutions. So just like with AI, as we saw before, people are open to help. Yeah, I'll take the help. I want to live life easier, not harder. And if tech can help me with that, I'm all in. And you're going to see a lot of these solutions at CES 2022. So, other areas that we've seen, just to briefly touch on this, to give a nod to, I was talking with my colleague, David Danto, about like remote work and so forth, new use cases, right? New use cases for TVs and so forth. We'll get a flavor for that, a lot of the display innovation that's happening. I've talked a good bit about smarter home, and then again, pursuing premium. But this is just a reminder that those consumer dynamics, people wanting to improve lifestyles and embrace innovation to lead a happier, healthier, better connected life, more productive life, they're open to that. And also, part of that home makeover is the home health hub. This is just another undercurrent trend, kind of riffing off smart home, but really also encompassing a lot of different health trends and smart home trends, really combining in this home health hub, whether it's monitoring and telemedicine at home, or also these connected fitness equipment like the Hydro Rower illustrated here. And in our data, as you can see here at the bottom of the slide, this is an emerging market opportunity that's rapidly gaining momentum. And when we think about brands like Hydro, Peloton, and a host of others, you can see that. And maybe some of you have already adopted some of these. Anybody ride a Peloton bike or doing that? I see a few hands, absolutely. So there you go. And lastly, let me just touch back on transportation, all the things that we're going to see at West Hall. Really the future of mobility, maybe a little bit cliched at this stage, but there's so much underneath that. Let me unpack that. We've talked about electric vehicles, all kinds of electric vehicles. Fisker is another EV brand that you'll see in West Hall. Smart mobility really speaks to the sensor innovation that we've seen, in particular LiDAR. Luminar was one of our CES Innovation Award honorees, and LiDAR used to be a really expensive sensor for perception of self-driving vehicles and advanced driver assistance systems. Not so much anymore. A lot of innovation in LiDAR, if you're into sensors, and that's kind of what you're looking to cover, tons of innovation to improve perception and lower cost. I talked before about 21st century logistics, and this is another area of key innovation, solving supply chain problems, a solution there, next mile solutions, last mile, e-bikes, scooters, and their kin. And most interestingly, looking towards probably from a business model standpoint and a reality overhead, urban air mobility. And ASCA is here in West Hall with their eVTOL 3, electric vertical takeoff and landing. So much to see just under the category umbrella of mobility. From the smallest e-bike to a flying car, it's all waiting for you in West Hall. And folks, that concludes my remarks, and I hope you've enjoyed this overview of trends. I hope that it's equipped you for what you're going to see at CES. I wish you much success in the new year, and thanks again for joining us here in Las Vegas for CES 2022. Thank you.